Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought today we would have a look at some stuff in the files that Mother Hen has found. Basically, I haven't really had too much looks at the data mines and also the additional stuff on the dev server. There has also been another update to it today, so I'm going to have a look at it now. But the interesting thing is there are two pieces of news, basically talking about naval and also air, which are quite important. The first one is about German aircraft in the Second World War, and it looks like they're going to be getting a new toy pretty soon, at least the Focke-Wulfs are, the FW190A8 specifically, and it is the Ruhrtahl X4. Now, if you don't know what the Ruhrtahl is, this is a air-to-air wire-guided missile. It's one of the earliest ones when it comes to its design and general setup, and the idea of it was to take down, well, the strategic bombers that the Americans specifically were using when Germany was desperate at the end of the Second World War. Now, what they've done is they've actually added the pylons for this thing. They haven't added the missile itself, but if they're adding the pylons, it makes sense that the missile is going to come eventually. This is a joystick-guided air-to-air missile, by the way, so it is kind of interesting how it works. Very similar to stuff like the SS-11, for example, and the prototype of it and also the testing of it happened in 1944, and there's some kind of interesting stuff. Obviously, it was wire-guided. It used incredibly dangerous chemicals in it, since, you know, it was one of those very early missiles, and one of the biggest issues that the pilots had with it was controlling the aircraft and also controlling the missile at the same time. It did have a proximity fuse on it, though, so it only had to get around about maybe 10 meters away from the target and then explode, and that would obviously cause the target to have issues. Now, the actual proximity fuse, it was an acoustical system, which is pretty cool, and it was tuned to 200 hertz, which basically was the sound of the B-17's engines in cruise. So they actually tuned this to specifically destroy B-17s. Now, the major problems with the missile were the same ones that you see from a lot of these Second World War things, where actually handling and building the thing was very tough to do because of the dangerous chemicals and also because of the labor and material shortage that Germany had in 1944 and 45. But the other problem they also had was actually guiding the thing while also controlling the aircraft. So what ended up happening was it didn't really go anywhere because, well, the war ended and it was supposed to be on a vehicle that was never built as well. So they did test it on the Focke-Wulf 190. It was supposed to also go on the Ju-88 and the 262, but ended up not having as much success and never really used past that. The French actually did use the technology, though, when they started their SS series, the SS-10, the 11, and the 12, and so on, so it didn't go to complete waste and was used after the war. The other news, which is going on in the dev server, is submarines. Now, submarines is one of those hot topics which is always talked about in naval, and since this update has been very heavily naval focused, it's been kind of cool to see more and more naval vehicles and more chat about them, especially with the Barham event coming in the next few days, and quite a long event that's going to be, so quite a lot of grinding. But what they've done is they've actually added in some code to the files for submarine spawns on maps. So instead of just having a spawn specifically for battleships, heavy cruisers, light cruisers, frigates, ships, boats, all of that stuff, it is specifically a spawn which is designed for submarines. So what we'll see is probably submarines in the future. They did do the test last year for submarines. I've got to be honest, I don't think it went very well. They put the submarines in a very, very rough position, and that basically meant that they didn't really have anywhere to go. So they also had to get super close to their targets in order to really do anything to them, and yeah, it just didn't work great. But submarines is one of those things that whenever I play naval, whenever we chat about naval, that's always the thing brought up. Where are the submarines? When are they going to come? What about aircraft carriers? You know, there's always that next step mentality whenever we look at whatever we're talking about. You know, when it comes to air, where's the FA-18? You know, that's always the thing. Where is the MiG-35? Where is the MiG-25? Or sorry, the MiG-31, I should say. And that's always kind of the way that these discussions happen. There's a set of people who are more interested in what War Thunder will eventually become instead of what it is right now. And with these code changes, at least on the dev server, it means they're planning on being able to introduce submarines in the future. Whether that's near or not, that's obviously the difference. This would be a kind of cool thing to ask a lot of like Gadget employees about, basically ask them what the plans are for submarines, because it's one of those things which has been super tight-lipped for the longest time. In War Thunder Mobile, you've seen submarines flourish alongside the other naval counterparts. So the models are obviously there, and after the test that we did previously, the vehicles are available, you know, to use and to go around with. The only question is, how do you balance them in regards to how, you know, the War Thunder area works? This is the biggest problem that Submarine has. When you have a look at like Naval Arcade and Naval Realistic battles, how do submarines fit in to that area? And once they figure that out, it will be, you know, kind of interesting. A lot of people have talked about the idea of giving them their own game mode, which won't work because there won't be enough players in order to keep it going. So then you'll have to change it into PvE, and then it just becomes another kind of assault idea, and everybody will just forget about it, and nothing will happen with it. And then the people who play it, which will be a very small amount of people, will constantly complain that they don't have enough resources and how their game mode should be being developed, even though it's only about 10 people. So you've got to find a way of incorporating it into the standard game modes. And I think with changes like this is what they're trying to do. Now, whether it works or not, that is the key, because submarines are a completely different weapon of war compared to everything else we've seen. And with War Thunder Naval, they're slowly going into kind of more missile machines, obviously with the combatants, which they're adding in now. They added the Strelas, you know, was it the last update or the update before? They're slowly increasing the amount of different kind of modifications and also different mechanisms that are in naval, and submarines are just another part of that puzzle that they have to figure out and how it's going to work. And that is tough because it's one of those that just fundamentally doesn't fit. But what this shows is they're at least giving it a go, and they're at least going to try it. The question is how. How do they do it? And maybe now, after, you know, French CBT or French Coastal is done, that is the time for them to start working on submarines. Maybe that's the next big goal for naval instead of additional tech trees. So that would be cool, and hopefully we see it. Those are the two little pieces of news, and I would love to hear your thoughts on more kind of air-to-air or air-to-ground missiles or anti-ship missiles from the Second World War. There's a bunch of really weird and wonky ones. And also, what do you think about submarines? Where do you think they fit in the game? And do you think they can work properly? As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.